Colorado already had a really good wide receiver room, but Shedeur Sanders said he wanted one more guy, and they got him, and now they probably have the best wide receiver room in all of college football in 2024.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys for making me your first listen of the day. We're talking about all things Colorado. They landed a defensive back transfer just a couple days ago that I said helped form the most dynamic corner duo in the Big 12. Travis Hunter and DJ McKinney. I think they can lock down any wide receiver in the country. I think that corner duo will make this team way better and take them to the next level. And today they added to their already loaded, already stacked, already ridiculously loaded and stacked wide receiver room by landing LaJohntay Wester, the Florida Atlantic transfer, who, mind you, he's a fifth-year guy, played under Tom Herman this past season, had a career year. Now, granted, he already had 2 seasons of 60-plus catches, and he nearly doubled that. He had 108 receptions for 1,168 yards, 8 touchdowns, averaged 10.8 yards per catch, and he is just one of those guys where you look at him and you go, oh, wow, that's some speed. That's some field stretching ability, and Colorado already had that. When I talk about them having the best wide receiver core in the country, they already have Travis Hunter. I don't know what his role is on the offense moving forward, because obviously they need him a lot more on defense than they do on offense, but they have him. He's already one of the best wide receivers in the country, and he does it part-time. They have Jimmy Horn Jr., who, speedy guy, led the team in touchdown catches, was one of Shedeur's favorite targets, was the guy who earned his jersey number first out of everybody of the new Colorado Buffaloes era. And so obviously Coach Prime has respect for him. He was heavily featured in the documentary on Amazon Prime, which you guys should go check out. I did a few recaps of those, so go find those and we could discuss in the comments if you'd like. But Jimmy Horn, Travis Hunter, and then they went out and got Will Sheppard from Vanderbilt, 6'3", almost 6'4", 198 pounds. He's coming off a season that saw him have 47 catches, 684 yards, 8 touchdowns, 14.6 yards per catch, kind of a jump ball guy, really someone who Shedeur Sanders kind of needed. Obviously, Xavier Weaver was kind of that jump ball guy, but he's not as big as Will Sheppard is. They had Javon Antonio, who was kind of expected to be, or kind of seen to be, like he was going to be that jump ball guy, that big target for Colorado. And he had a couple good games, but I think we learned more about Colorado's secondary than we did about Javon Antonio in those preseason workout videos where he was absolutely torching people, bodying people. Just turns out Colorado's secondary was not that good outside of Travis Hunter. Cormani McClain has a lot of work to go. He had a PFF coverage grade of around 53-ish, I believe. Or Marion Cooper played a lot, didn't play that well at all times. And so, like I said, I think we learned more about how weak not Travis Hunter, how weak Colorado's secondary outside of Travis Hunter was, more than we learned about Javon Antonio. And so I look at this wide receiver room now, because also, let me tell you, they went out and got these 2 transfers. They bring in Jimmy Horn last year. Mind you, coming into their 2024 class, they have Draylon Miller, who's a 4-star wide receiver, top 75 player in the country, and they have Cameron McKell. So they have those guys. They also brought Cordell Russell, the TCU transfer who goes by Baby T.O. Didn't play at TCU, but former highly touted recruit. And then you have Tavares Dawson. You have guys like, oh my goodness, you have so many weapons. Caleb Mathis. You have so many weapons at your disposal. And so what does this do for Colorado? Why did they need to do this? Well, for one, I think last year coming into the season, we thought, and this is something I thought too, I was like, Colorado's receiver room was really good. I think, honestly, I was like, they probably have one of the better, more underrated receiver rooms in all college football. And then you look at the stats and who's playing well. They lose Xavier Weaver, their leading receiver. He had 68 catches. Travis Hunter is obviously a defensive back that's doubling as a receiver, who could probably be a first-round pick at receiver if he wanted to be, but he projects on the defensive side. Are they trying to replace him or trying to lessen his load on offense? Maybe. Or maybe they were accounting for the fact that they kind of fizzled. So obviously Xavier Weaver was good. Travis Hunter was good. He was out for a few games with injury. Jimmy Horn was really good. He did have some drop issues. I think Jimmy Horn kind of suffers from the case of his biggest enemy is himself. I think when he struggles, he kind of beats himself up and takes himself out of the game. And we've seen a lot of times during the game where Coach Prime is literally talking to him on the sideline, like, dude, we need you. We need you. Make a big play right here. And he's made big plays, but he's also let himself down. And I think having other guys around him will help propel him, take the pressure off him. Then Dylan Edwards, who's a running back. I think he'd be a great slot receiver, but that's just me. He was fourth on the team in catches. They lose Mikey Harrison, the tight end, followed Sean Lewis of San Diego State. And then Omarion Miller had 11 catches. Javon Antonio had 17. Tavares Dawson had 14. So outside of Weaver, who's gone, Hunter, who they probably need to focus more on defense, and Jimmy Horn, they didn't have a wide receiver with over 20 catches. You bring in all these guys. You give Shedeur Sanders a better offensive line. Shedeur Sanders was putting up huge numbers, historic numbers for Colorado, with arguably the worst offensive line in college football. Now he has a really good offensive line, or at least, I haven't seen them play all together. So on paper, they're really good. We'll call them average for now. They could be above average by the time the season rolls around, but I'm going to say they're going to be an average offensive line is their floor. Shedeur Sanders was balling with a terrible offensive line. So give him an average offensive line, cuts off maybe 20 sacks, which brings the sack total from 56 to 36. His numbers are looking real good because last season he threw for 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, 3 picks. You give him an average offensive line. You give him all these weapons that are consistent. I think that was kind of where Colorado lost some of their luster was they lacked consistency in the wide receiver core outside of their top 2 or 3 guys. And this Colorado team is now looking like they could be one of the best offenses in college football, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But, I mean, LaJohntay Wester, let's just focus on him real quick. He's 5'11", 167, a Florida native. And you know those Florida kids, they always got the speed. But he's a dynamic guy. He's dynamic when the ball's in his hands. He's dynamic. They used him in the rushing attack a lot at Florida Atlantic. He had 36 carries for 213 yards. So you could use him like Deebo Samuel if you want. You could use him however you'd like because he will be open. You get him the ball in his hands and he's going to make plays. He also returned punts. He has 57 punt returns, 632 yards in his career. Had a punt return for a touchdown this past season. So you also get a speedy wide receiver who you could give him the ball in the backfield. You can have him return punts. You can have him return kicks. He could do a little bit of everything. And so now this wide receiver room is looking like Will Shepherd, Travis Hunter, or whatever order, wherever position they're probably positionless. They could probably play rock, paper, scissors for who's going to play on the boundary, who's going to play inside, and I'm sure they'll be fine. It all just matters where Shedeur wants to go the ball at the end of the day because they're probably going to be open. Someone's going to be open, and Shedur's going to get it to him. So you have Travis Hunter, Will Shepherd, LaJohntay Wester. I think him and Jimmy Horn kind of similar skill sets. I think they'll battle out for that spot. And then you get the tight end from Cincinnati, Shimon Mateer. I don't know how to say his first name. I'll figure it out eventually. He is a big bodied weapon that can help block, but he can also receive a little bit. So if the secondary is trying to key in on the receivers, well, guess what? Mateer is going to be open in the flat. He's going to be open over the middle of the field, and Shedeur Sanders will check it down to him. Shedeur Sanders has shown that he's more than willing to take the smart throws rather than take those deep shots. But then he's going to have plenty of opportunities to take these deep shots because Wester and Horn might be the fastest wide receiver duo in the country, which is saying a lot considering how many talented wide receivers are out there. They got speed. They got physicality in Will Shepherd and Travis Hunter. They got guys that are jump ball threats. And then you have all these freshmen, all these guys, or even the guys that were there last year. I like Tavares Dawson and the few snaps that we saw him play. He's speedy. You could use him out of the backfield. He was always open. He was running great routes. And then you get Draylon Miller, who is kind of as John Garcia from Rivals when he came on the show. He's a freak of nature. He could come in right away and start on both sides of the ball if he wanted. Same with Cameron McKell. So this Colorado wide receiver core, I think, has a case for being one of the best in the country. Texas had the best or one of the best wide receiver cores in the country this past season. They're losing their guys. Ohio State had Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Obuke, I believe is how you say the other guy's last name. He was really good. And I think Colorado's is on par with those. I think if they're not the best, they're probably top 5 at worst. And so Shedeur Sanders is poised for another huge year. I talked about his Heisman odds being a little low. Yeah, get those Heisman odds up because the Shedeur Sanders stock is going through the roof. I'm really shocked at how well Coach Prime put together this offense. And it's going to be a completely different unit because while they were explosive and they did have their moments, I think there was, moments where they fizzled. There was moments where it was like, okay, who's going to step up? And now I don't see that happening anymore. They got too many weapons for that to happen. So I'm going to talk about what I think this offensive ceiling is going to be compared to this year. But first, a word from our sponsors over at Jace Medical. I know we come to talk about sports and escape from all the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for that real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if Kristen, my girlfriend, or one of my future kids or one of my cousins or someone got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. This stuff can happen to any of us. Visit Jace Medical and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to prepare than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use offer code locked on to get $20 off your order. Again, go to Jace Medical, JASE, medical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. This Colorado offense, I mean, last season, let me pull up where they ranked. They had a really good rush, or no, excuse me. They had a really good passing attack that was really hurt by their lack of rushing attack. Now, obviously, I think things will change a little bit next year. There's going to be a new play caller in town who's going to emphasize the run game more. There's going to be a better running back, I guess quartet, you could say. There's just going to be a lot more stability on offense, a lot less pressure on Shedeur Sanders because teams could really key in on him. I think it was kind of a crazy, really process of like this team has the best passing attack in the country, but you look at where they ranked in total offense, it was number 80 in the country, and it's like, how's that possible? Well, they're their rushing attack limited them. They had Dylan Edwards, they had Anthony Hankerson, they had all these running backs that were thought to be that we thought were going to be impactful, but the offensive line took them out of the offense. Dylan Edwards led the team in rushing with 76 carries for 320 yards, 4.2 yards per carry. Anthony Hankerson had 319 yards, 4.1 yards per carry with a touchdown. Both had one rushing touchdown. Savion Wilkerson, 53 carries for 190 yards, 3.6 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. Led the team in rushing touchdowns for running backs, and there was really no run game. And then you look at, like, they also had Alton McCaskill, who he had 14 carries. They have him listed as 14 carries, which shocks me. I honestly don't even remember him running the ball that much, for 59 yards. And he was a little banged up, and so he gets healthy this offseason. I think that's huge. I think Cameron McKell is someone who maybe plays a role in the backfield, maybe doesn't. But even then, you got a healthy Alton McCaskill. You got Dylan Edwards back. You got Savion Wilkerson. Run game is there. The offensive line just needs to be, again, average offensive line. Just push the defense forward. I think the problem with the rushing attack was every time they try to hand the ball off, whether it was on a read option or RPO or whatever it may be, just a simple handoff, a simple pitch, the defense was in the backfield by the time the running back was taking his first step. And so I wish I wrote it down, but there was a really good follow on Twitter called Stats of War, and he does analytics of all sorts of things. And one of his analytics was Colorado's, well, not just Colorado, but teams that basically who was good at running the ball or who had running backs that were making plays out of the backfield. And so it's one of those things where Colorado, I'm gonna see if I could find it while I talk about it. Colorado kind of had this weird um, scenario where if they made plays in the run game, it wasn't because the offensive line was blocking, it was because they were getting shifty in the backfield. They were getting elusive in the backfield, and they need more of this. They need more shiftiness, obviously, but they also need the offensive line and not get pushed off the ball. And so he says, and this is me reading it, his name's Parker Fleming. Go follow him. Really good follow. One way to evaluate run games in college football is to compare schemes and offensive line yards before contact with running back ability yards after contact. So he has a little chart, and it says further right equals better scheme / offense line. Further up on the chart equals better running back talent and ability. Colorado is down and to the left. So their scheme wasn't good. Their offensive line wasn't good, and their running back ability was not shown or showcased well enough. They were with teams like, and this is for reference, they were ranked in similar rushing stature like Hawaii, who barely ran the ball, Northwestern, who had a really poor offensive line and poor offense, Nevada, who's one of the worst teams in college football, Vanderbilt, one of the worst teams in college football, Michigan State. So they were not only bad at they had bad schemes. The offensive line was not allowing the running backs to get past the line of scrimmage without being hit. So this offensive line, they come in, they block a little bit better. Alton McCaskill, maybe we get the freshman version of him that we saw at Houston. And this is a different dynamic because now Shedeur Sanders isn't having to take 30 bajillion hits per game. He's not having to drop back 50 times a game because he could just turn around, hand the ball off, and they could get 10 yards a carry. That'd be great. So I think the running back room could be improved. I think with all these receivers, like I already said, I think they had the best wide receiver core in the Big 12 and probably a top 5 receiver core in college football. And they have size, they have speed, they have route running, they have depth. And I think the depth thing is a huge issue because we look at this season, Omarion Miller was kind of that guy who we were expecting to step up. And he had that really good game. I think it was against USC where it was like, okay, Omarion Miller has arrived. And then he kind of faded. It was like, oh, where'd he go? And then Jimmy Horn had moments where he would just kind of take himself out of the game, out of frustration, I think. And I think that's something he needs to work on. But yeah, so let me pull up Omarion Miller's stats. So he has 7 catches against USC, and it's like, okay, 7 catches for 196 yards and a touchdown. And I think he had a 2-point conversion as well. And then he played against Arizona State, against UCLA, against Oregon State, and against Washington State. He had 4 catches for a total of 38 yards, because one of them was for a negative 1 yard. So he went from 7 catches for 196 to 4 catches for 38 yards. Okay. He wasn't having the impact that we thought he'd have. And then the rest of the receivers, Tavares Dawson was someone who was kind of featured, not heavily, but featured early in the season. Last game he played was against Oregon, and then he was done for the year. I think it was schematic issues, not knowing the playbook well enough was what I was told. He basically was fizzled out. Javon Antonio, another wide receiver, big body, 6'4", 225. Honestly, could have played tight end. He had this stretch against Arizona State and Stanford. He had 9 catches in those 2 games, and then he had 5 catches the rest of the season. So he went from having 9 catches to 3 catches in 3 games. And it's like you have all these guys, and it's like they should be good. They should be making plays, but where are they at? And it's like they didn't have the trust of Shedeur. They weren't doing what they needed to do in practice. They weren't doing whatever they needed to do to get open. And this wide receiver core will no longer have that issue. Tavares Dawson went from being probably the 4th best receiver to now being probably receiver number 7 on this team because in no particular order, again, Travis, Will, Wester from FAU. You got Jimmy. You got Draylon Miller. That's 5 guys right there. Cordell Russell is expected to have a role. Then you got Tavares Dawson. Then you got Caleb Mathis. Like, there's a lot of guys in this room, and people are probably like, why do they need so many receivers? They had a receiver problem. Let me put that out there. They had a receiver problem because they had a lack of consistency. They got consistency from 2-3 guys, counting Travis, and the rest of the offense. It was like, okay, who else is going to get open? Because defenses were keying in on certain guys. Defenses were doubling Travis. Defenses were doubling Xavier. They were making Shedeur. They were taking away everything deep, and then they were making guys get open down in the short and intermediate game, and nobody was able to do that. Now they're going to have so many weapons that it's going to be like a pick your poison type of thing. And so I think this Colorado offense with the improved offense line, with a healthy running back room, with a more loaded wide receiver room, this offense could be kind of the difference between Colorado competing for the Big 12. It really could be. We've seen offenses carry teams to the title game. We've seen them carry to the playoff. Oklahoma, for instance, under Lincoln Riley, those teams never had good defenses. They didn't. They would have good defensive moments where it was like they forced turnovers, but the defense itself was not good. They were bad at tackling. They were bad at everything else. If Colorado's defense improves, who knows what their offense can do. Their offense could probably carry them to a Big 12 title appearance at least, or at least competing for the Big 12. But this offense is looking real good. I think when I do my stats predictions this year, it's going to be really difficult because it's going to be like, who's getting the ball this much? There's so many guys, there's so many weapons for sure to throw to. So it's just one of those things where Colorado reloaded. Coach Prime saw a need. He saw where this team struggled. He saw where they needed to improve. And guess what? He improved in those places. This episode of Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab, where you can just find what's popping. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays, one that the community is riding with. Who we going with this on this day? You know what I mean? And more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel is official partner of the NFL. Okay, welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, give me those 5 stars. We're well over 4,300 subscribers. I appreciate you guys on YouTube. Let's get 5 stars on Spotify and Apple. Let's get there. Okay. Our good friends over at Athlon, my company, but not me. Excuse me. My company released a early Big 12 predictions for 2024, and I could not disagree more. So let's just run through it. I think at the top, I agree with this. Utah, #1, makes sense. Arizona, 2, makes sense. They were a breakout team. They kind of were thriving on offense. They kept everybody. They kept their wide receivers. They kept their quarterbacks. They got good running backs. Jed Fish is leading them in the right direction. Kansas State, 3, it's like, okay, I could see it. Their young quarterback played well, kind of chased off Will Howard to Ohio State. Okay. This is where I start to disagree. Oklahoma State at 4. I think this Oklahoma State team benefited from schedule more so than talent. They obviously had Ollie Gordon, who was really good. But I digress. Alan Bowman did not wow me at quarterback, and I don't know if Oklahoma State can live with another mediocre Alan Bowman season. Kansas, they went 9-4 this year. They're really good, but Jalen Daniels struggles to stay healthy. Until he stays healthy, I can't trust him. West Virginia, 9-4. I think they were a little bit disrespected. They could have been in the top 25. Can they string together back-to-back good years? Maybe. Iowa State, they didn't show me anything. Texas Tech, same thing. They didn't show me anything. They were a Big 12 dark horse and ended up finishing 7-6. TCU, who Colorado beat and probably could have beat by 20 if their defense was somewhat alive against TCU. At 9, UCF with KJ Jefferson at the helm, the Arkansas quarterback, they have him at 10. And then Colorado at 11, only above Arizona State, BYU, Baylor, Cincinnati, and Houston. Like I said, I think Colorado's defense will be improved. They got good pass rushers. They got some improved corners. They have a really good cornerback duo. They have a really good safety in Preston Hodge, who's going to be coming into the mix. And they just have more depth. They have more bodies. I would be shocked if anybody on the defense line, well, maybe Shane Cokes because he's a team leader. But if I look at that defense line week 1 next year, I'm telling you right now, whatever defensive scheme they run, because obviously we don't know who the defense coordinator is yet. So we'll just say a 3-4 or 4-3 we'll just go 4-3 base for S and G's. I imagine Shane Cokes will be the only guy. Obviously, they lose Derek McClendon. They lose Jordan Dominic. They lose Leonard Payne to the NFL. But there's other guys like Amari McNeil. There's other guys like Savell Smalls. Not a single guy from last year's roster will be starting outside of Shane Cokes, would be my prediction. I think Quincy Wiggins and Quinn Barnes, those guys will be starting. I think, and I don't say this lightly, Chidozie Nwanku, the Houston guy, he has Big 12 experience, which they need. Plop him into the middle. Samuel O from Pitt, plop him onto the line. Wouldn't shock me if there's not a single starter from last year's defense line starting again. It wouldn't. The secondary, I talked about DJ McKinney yesterday. There's a reason they went out and got him. Omarion Cooper did his best, but he was targeted often. We saw it in the doc. Coach Prime said, I think it was against Oregon State, can we get help for number 3? They're targeting him. Next play, touchdown, Amarion Cooper's zone. I think it was, couldn't tell the angle kind of threw me off. Couldn't tell if it was zone or man, but he was at fault. I know that. Amarion Cooper needs help. He can't be your second best corner. We just saw that. He had all year to prove he could be, and he couldn't be. They have an improved secondary. They have an improved defensive line group. They got a couple linebackers that will help improve this unit. They got Lundy out of Florida State. This defense is very much improved. Even if the defense is average or slightly above average, it's better than 130th in the country because that's where they were. The offense, I think the offense is one of the best, most improved units in all of college football. And I think the Big 12 schedule won't be able to handle this offense. I really don't. Outside of Arizona and Utah, maybe Kansas State, there's not a single offense on that schedule where I'm like, they could keep up with Colorado because it's going to be hard to keep up with Colorado. It doesn't matter who's calling plays. I could be calling plays and it'd be hard to keep up with them. So a lot of reasons to be excited for. I think the win total for Colorado, according to betonline.ag, was 6. Early predictions right now, and I'll circle back to this obviously when the season gets closer. It's January, so we got 8 months until their next game. I think this is a 7 to 8 win team, and I think it could improve even more once I see what's going on in spring ball and stuff like that. But this Colorado team is trending in the right direction. Deion Sanders formed an elite cornerback room, or I won't say elite, but he formed a really dynamic duo in the cornerback room. Plus, you have Cormani McLean, who should take a step. And then he goes out and forms the best wide receiver room in college football. If you're a Colorado fan, you have to love it. If you're a fan of any other Big 12 program, you kind of have to respect it. You kind of do. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs and making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, comment below. Any questions you guys may have, I'll do a little question and answer thing. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday.